Greetings everyone and welcome to another Starship Review. Today we're going to take a look at the legendary D7 Battlecruiser. This is part of the legendary KDF Captain bundle that comes with a level 65 boost, but I'm just going to be looking at the ship today. However, the bundle does come with a new console, which is not technically part of the ship because it has to be reclaimed separately from the dilithium store. In my opinion, it's their way of including a new console without setting a precedent for including new consoles. I've complained a lot in the past that legendary ships didn't have new consoles, so I'm very happy about this. This seems to be a compromise, and I'm totally fine with it. Big thumbs up to the dev team, thank you. Let's talk about the stats. The D7 has good hull and shield modifiers at 1.4 and 1.2 respectively. The power bonuses, 10 for weapons and 10 for engines, is nice. The Battlecruiser Mastery package has resistances and crit severity, so it's quite nice as well. It also has access to 3 cruiser commands, including weapon system efficiency. It doesn't have a tracked fire though, so while it could be used for tanking, it's probably best to use a cruiser variant that does have it. The D7 has a 5-3 weapon layout, which is great. The bridge officer layout is tight, but very powerful, with both Intel seating and Miracle Worker seating, as well as 2 universal seats. It's a bit hard to mix the specialization powers you want with the basics, using higher ranks, but whenever that happens on a ship, it's usually a happy problem. As a full Intel ship, it has access to Gather Intelligence, which is practically useless, as it takes forever to proc. A lot of people wanted the Miracle Worker and Intel to be switched around, and while that would have been better, what we have is still very good, and it's the only account unlock in the game that has both Intel and Miracle Worker, so there is something to be said for that. The maneuverability stats are not as nice as you'll get with a more nimble ship class, but in practice it feels just fine to fly. You can make a very powerful energy weapon build with this ship. Let's talk about the traits, starting with the legacy trait, Built to Last. When using a hull healing bridge officer ability, you get hull regen that scales as your hull goes down, and a 33% weapon power cost reduction for 20 seconds. Both of those buffs are very good, and most builds are going to run at least one hull heal, usually on a short cooldown, so you can keep it up all the time. It doesn't find its way into a lot of high-end builds, but I think that mostly comes down to the weapon cost reduction being available with Emergency Weapon Cycle, which is a trait a lot of people have that gives more damage rather than survival. You're definitely not going to go wrong using this trait though. It's very good and something worth using, especially as an account unlock. Before we talk about the new trait, Shall We Not Revenge, let me ask you a question. If everyone expects something to underperform, and it underperforms, then did it actually underperform? Because it seems to me like that would just be meeting expectations. Something to ponder, I suppose. On a completely unrelated note, the new trait is terrible. I was actually very optimistic about this one, for some reason. I loaded up on disruptor buffs and took it out for testing a couple of times. I should have known better. Feedback pulse abilities of all kinds are just bad in this game. It has no redeeming qualities. It's not good for meta builds, or fun builds, or theme builds. It's not good as a substitution for character unlock traits. It doesn't have cool visuals or any benefit outside of combat. It's just a clunker. Avoid at all costs. If the accessory score were based solely on this trait, I think it would be the first ever 0. Well, it can only go up from here, so let's talk about the consoles, starting with the legacy console, Ominous Device. I have a fondness for this console. The clicky, which does an AoE fear and debuff, doesn't do anything for me personally, but the passive gives a 20% Cat 1 boost across the board. Not only is this great for builds that have mixed damage types, but it also allows you to boost esoteric damage types like fire or electrical. It's just really handy to have in your toolkit when doing ship builds, especially for theme builds, off-meta, and fun builds. They also removed the ship restriction, so you can use it on any ship now, which is really cool. The Magnetometric Generator comes off the Tier 3 Koro Tinga Battlecruiser. It has no passives, and the clicky does a cone-shaped kinetic damage and knockback effect. I'd only use it for roleplay. These kinds of consoles are really just here for completeness, and I don't really expect anything from them. And now on to the new console, which is a weird thing to say on a legendary review. The Stasis Field Projector turned out to be a lot better than I thought. It gives you 2.86% cooldown reduction for Science, Engineering, and Tactical as passives, which isn't much, but it's nice to have on builds where you're just a bit short on CDR. The clicky, however, looks like it will be quite useful for support builds. The clicky disables weapons and applies a massive 45 damage resistance debuff for 20 seconds. Are nanny builds or tanks going to use this? Probably not, but the fact that we're even discussing it feels like a win since my expectations were 0. Let's score this thing. In terms of performance, it has to be 5 stars. This is one of the best battlecruisers in the game. It's one of the best energy weapon ships in the game and probably the best energy weapon ship in the C-Store. It's a very good ship. It's not going to compete with the meta kinetic builds, but not everyone is into that, and energy weapon builds are far cheaper to make. In terms of the accessory score, this thing is being carried by the legacy items Built to Last and Ominous Device, which still only brings it up to 4 stars. Both of them are good and useful and deserve respect, but they're also second draft choices. The Stasis Field Projector has some niche appeal, but I wouldn't give it more than 3 stars for that, and the new trait is one of the worst in the entire game. I think I'd rather use unconventional tactics on the strategist skill tree, and that thing's been power crept into the ground at this point. Everything good about the extras comes from the promo D7 Legacy package. In conclusion, any fans of the D7 should be very happy with this ship. It's a strong performer, and while the design is not my cup of tea, the art team has done a magnificent job as usual. I actually enjoyed looking at it more than I expected. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this one, and I feel the dev team did justice here. However, if you aren't a fan of the D7 design, and you already own the original Legendary bundle, then you can probably pass on this one. The performance isn't going to be insanely better than some other C-Store ship, and you already have the best of the accessory package from the Legendary Connie. Even if the new console proves useful for tanks or support builds, and I kinda doubt it, it's probably not worth spending $60 on. In other words, I'd only recommend buying it because you want to fly the D7. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already so you can see more of my videos in the future. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.